Yo, welcome back. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. Hope you have a good one. Hope you have fun with your family. Yo, I got some time today checking out. Got a new video for y'all. Blessing up. Why ancient ruins are underground. And also, I got a video game that I start playing. I've been doing a whole lot of emulation video game that I download, but never had a chance to play. So I'm gonna play those, and it's free. So if you guys like those things, you guys can also download and play yourself. But yeah, more to come. Here we go. Why our ancient ruins are underground.
This is what the Roman Forum looked like in 1864, and this is what it looks like today. When archaeologists started digging here, they uncovered an entire world of ruins deep underground that hadn't been seen for centuries.
Whoa, it look nice as hell. What the hell is this?
Covered an entire world of ruins deep underground that hadn't been seen for centuries. Over time, the city had risen by more than 10 meters, and older buildings had been completely forgotten about.
Oh, whoa. So it was like
Risen by more than 10 meters, and
33 feet?
older buildings had been completely forgotten about.
What happened? Why don't we just want to make an extra basement?
All over the world, you'll find ruins that are slowly being left behind by the constant rise of the streets, and
Why?
modern cities that have been built on top of old ruins. The ancient city of Troy was rebuilt 10 times, forming 10 distinct layers, all built directly on top of each other.
What the hell?
Even the city of Seattle has an entire network of mysterious abandoned shops and houses buried
What?
beneath the modern streets. But
Seattle have an underground city? What the hell?
why are cities built on top of each other? Is the street level actually rising? And why does history always end up buried deep underground? We modeled the entire thing to show you how civilizations build on top of each other. We'll also look at the crazy historical layers beneath Rome, these strange hills all over the Middle East, and the mysterious city purposefully buried beneath Seattle over 100 years ago. There is no single reason why cities are built on top of each other. After the Great Fire of Rome in the 1st century, most of the city had to be rebuilt. But instead of clearing away the rubble, it was quicker and easier to simply flatten it out and build on top. This meant that
What about all the fucking trash?
new buildings were about a meter higher than the street. And so, to match the new height, the streets were raised and resurfaced using rocks from the surrounding debris. With every fire and natural disaster that occurred, this process would repeat itself, raising the city and leaving old ruins buried underground. One of the clearest examples of this is the Basilica of San Clemente in Rome. The structure we see today is from the 12th century, but it was built directly on top of an old church from the 4th century.
What the hell?
That church was built directly on top of a mysterious old temple. And that temple was built on top of an old house. And there are even older ruins beneath that. All in all, the valley in which San Clemente lies is now 18 meters higher than it was in the 1st century.
Whoa.
Here's what
So
happened.
You can just like that little ass place could have an elevator 18 levels down.
Back in 1st century Rome, before the
Word.
Colosseum was built, a Roman villa sat at the bottom of the valley. After being damaged in a fire, it was converted into a temple by the Mithra people, a mysterious cult which was gaining popularity throughout Rome. But by the end of the 4th century, the temple was partially destroyed by the Christians. Looking to promote their religion, they decided to build a new basilica on top of the old temple. This basilica served the Christians for another 800 years. But by the 12th century, it fell into disrepair. After multiple fires and rebuilds around the basilica, the street level had risen considerably. And so instead of knocking it down, a new basilica was built on top. This is the one we see today. Eventually, the ruins beneath the basilica were filled in, and because no one kept track, all knowledge of the previous layers was completely lost. But in the 1800s, an archaeologist started digging and unearthed the old basilica with a
Holy shit. So they just unearthed all of that?
Gaming take over your life? You're not alone, and it might not be your fault. The makers of games like
They just
Fortnite,
walk in and they
staircase
just start
leading down
doing
to the
work on
first
this
century
shit?
temple. Unearthed the old
Like, how do they
basilica
know,
with
like,
a
what
staircase
direction to
leading
dig?
down to the first century temple. Inside was a Mithra shrine, and scrolled on the walls
What the
were
hell?
paintings dedicated to the Mithra god and the logo of the Opera web browser. Just kidding. Opera is bringing a fully dive collab viewed tab. You work and browse like a pro tab. You can just hit pictures you will theme the Aurora, a new era of browsing. We've seen how Rome is built almost entirely on old ruins. But one of the best examples of a layered city
These are
dates
really
back to a
cool,
time long
3D
before
map that
Rome
he's
ever
making,
existed. All over the Middle East, you'll find these strange-looking
really
hills
good
with
work.
mysteriously flat tops. These are known as tells. Tel as in Tel Aviv, which used to look like this. These are artificial hills formed by centuries of civilizations building on top of each other. Inside
in
each
Turkey?
tell is a world full of old ruins lost in time. Perhaps one of the most impressive of these is the ancient city of Troy, which first began as a small settlement back in 3000 BC. The buildings were mostly made from mud bricks, and when they were destroyed, the material decomposed and covered the ruins in soil. Then a new settlement came along and built on top. Over the following millennia, 8 more civilizations took over this mound, going from the Persians to Alexander the Great and eventually the Romans, up until the year 500 AD, when the nearby port dried up and the last civilization left the city. Eventually, the buildings crumbled back into the hill and the soil took over, making Troy a complete mystery until it was discovered in the 1800s.
So
In
time
most
just took
cases,
it back.
humans are the main cause of layered cities. But there is something we haven't talked about yet. What happens when buildings and cities literally sink into the ground? Did you know that Shanghai is currently sinking by around 1 centimeter every year? In fact, most major cities across China are all sinking. For centuries, the only way to get fresh drinking water was to pump it out of the ground. But by doing this, the pores that hold the water are emptied, causing the ground to compress and sink. This is a
Like a
problem all
sponge.
over the world, but the soil beneath Shanghai is particularly soft, and with the sheer weight of all the skyscrapers sitting on top, the city has shrunk around 3 meters in the last century. When cities sink too much, they fall below sea level and end up completely lost. The only real solution to get above the water is to build on top. That is exactly what happened in Seattle. Although Seattle is only 175 years old, it already has an entire network of streets and abandoned buildings hidden beneath the modern city. In 1889, a devastating fire ripped through the newly formed city, and just like Rome, almost
We did have a similar fire here in Chicago too. I think burned through the entire city.
everything had to be rebuilt. The mayor took
Yeah, I
this
think
as
there's
an
some
opportunity
underground
to
stuff in
drastically
Chicago.
improve the city's design, which already had huge problems with flooding. The idea was to raise the entire city and install drainage pipes underneath the streets, allowing the water to naturally flow out to the sea. To pull this off, 6-meter-high stone walls were built on either side of the streets, and roads were built on top. For a while, Seattle went through a weird phase with its buildings sat 2 stories below street level, and people had to descend on ladders to get to shops and houses. Eventually, the gaps were filled in and proper sidewalks were installed, leaving behind a well-preserved city right beneath Seattle's streets.
What the heck?
And now, time for the Primal Space giveaway. The
That's
winner of
crazy. Well, that's it, guys. Wow. So I guess a lot of it is just like laziness for cleaning up. I guess that makes sense, dude. I guess the most complex questions often the time have the easiest answer. Why does all the ruin is underground? Hey, listen, man. Ain't nobody trying to clean up after the party, yo. Very simple. Until next time, yeah.